First time in Pakistan. I never thought I would come to Pakistan. That is all my problem. It's not your problem. But here I am, so the problem is fixed, and I'm really happy to meet so many friendly faces and have the opportunity to, I think, engage in what I believe is part of a bigger program of building. We had a meeting this morning, myself and my colleague Shabir and some important partners of mine from the University of Harapur. We had a meeting with the HEC and it was very, very positive, and there'll be more to be said about some of the outcome of that in this afternoon's session. But one of the things that the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan is very keen to do with its research community is capacity building. And I really made a strong case for why this framework that we've experimented with in terms of the competition, and it's not just about the competition, but this framework designed for early career researchers, for novice researchers, is about capacity building at the very, very lowest but important level, at that grassroots level. So I'm really pleased to be here to continue the momentum of this program. And the Train the Trainers session will inevitably have elements that are of great familiarity to you. But what I've tried to do in designing the PowerPoint slides, and I'm not necessarily going to look at every slide because there's more material than we can cover, but I've tried to do this in a way that gives some new insights. That are particularly pertinent to the trainers. And I know that, I suspect there's a few students in here, they're the trainers of the future. So that's fine, but to train the trainers for me is really important, because I'm one person and I can only be in one place at one time. I guess technology allows that to multiply. But in the end, if this framework is going to be successful, then I have to convince trainers of the value, I have to convince trainers of what positive things can happen, and I have to invest time, effort and energy in providing resources and guidance on how you can best apply the pitching research framework. So that's really my goal today, and I've really tried hard to give a few different insights and to provide a set of slides where there are links, live links to resources that as trainers you can use. These slides are absolutely totally available for anyone who wants them. There's currently residing on the hard disk of that computer, but I would really encourage that in an appropriate way, anyone who wants access to these slides should have access. It's quite a large lot of megabytes, so it's not necessarily something we want to be circulating via email, but if it can be made available electronically in a central repository and people given links to it, I'd warmly encourage that. Now, as everyone in the room knows, and should know, and hopefully I want to stress and emphasise as reflected in this particular slide, is that the basis of the framework is a paper that resides on the Social Sciences Research Network, been downloaded over 12,700 times. What I would want to stress to the trainers is that while I'm happy for you to circulate any variation of materials, in terms of the paper itself, which I think is an essential reading for the target group, I'd like the students to be encouraged to access this paper directly themselves. The papers, these are available for free download, and for me, I don't wish to encourage bad behaviour, but the metric of downloads is an important metric of impact. So I suppose another way of putting it is I don't like the idea of the PDFs being circulated directly. Just direct the students that are going to use the framework to go to the source, which is the Social Sciences Research Network. So along the journey for me, I came up one day with a phrase that I believe says it all. Your research journey starts here, and I'm happy to have the University of Queensland Business School logo as part of this. Now, the University of Queensland has the goal of challenging the future. And I like to, my variation of this is let's create the future, and for our young researchers, let's create the future in a way that can utilise a simple framework like the one that everyone in the room knows about. So I like the number 3, but and I should have 3 goals, but somehow I've got 4 goals. So these are the goals that I want to do for the trainers today. I want to spend a little bit of time, but not too much repetitive time, on the basic tool itself and the philosophy. I've got a different angle on this that has in mind the trainers. All right. So there's lots of slides, and I think I'll cherry pick. You'll get the idea, and then you've got reference to the slides later on. So the second goal will then be to think about the applications of the framework that can help develop student research skills. And I've got a few angles on that to share with you. Then, subject to time, I'm going to give you a little extract of an example that I was working on the plane, almost on the plane. Well, because I've already been away from Brisbane for 5 days. I spent 3 days in Indonesia and one night in Singapore, and I did several, you can guess it, pitching research talks. And so on the plane I was looking at some material for an upcoming part of my tour of the world, this trip. I'm spending a week in Poland. And in Poland I'm doing a paper development workshop. And the paper development workshop is, you've guessed it, aimed at early career researchers. And a key element of that workshop is that those early career researchers have to submit a pitch. So I've been reading about 5 of these pitches, and the starting point, and I'll go into more detail of this later on in Goal 3, but I annotated the pitches. So I'm going to show you an extract of the annotation, and then I'm going to share with you, and there's a lot of very bad handwriting, so I will, on a slide, summarise what I had in mind in terms of the annotation of the pitch. So the idea here is, in terms of training the trainers, is give you an insight into how I use this framework to actually help and advise students. And then finally, there's some slides that talk about some other helpful resources. Probably by the time we get to that part of the talk, maybe it's already time for us to think about having a break, having some lunch and resting. So I'll promise not to torture you too much at that stage, but as I said, I'd like to provide you with a set of slides where, as trainers, you can use these as suits you. You can figure out what is of interest, and hopefully it will help you train in terms of using the framework going forward. So goal 1, I've only given a talk like this about 260 times in the last 4 years. So the last 20, 30, 50 times, a prime motivation for the talk is this cartoon, and sadly it's a little small, even though the screen's quite big, the room is big as well. It's a little small for you to read what is happening in each of the 3 cells of this cartoon. But hopefully you can make out that the theme that's written across the top of the cartoon strip is, I've looked at it. So let's assume everyone in the room is a trainer, and I know some of you are pretending, but for simplicity, we're all trainers. So for simplicity, and I don't want to offend anyone by suggesting that you have to imagine you are the person with the, it's not a dark beard, but it's a beard, the glasses, not so young, but think of it, I'll pretend to be that person, the senior professor. And the senior professor has received something from a student. And the student only is seen in the first cell. They have their back to us in this cartoon. And basically that student has supplied their professor with a lot of material to read around their research. And my experience is this is many, many pages, 10, 20, 30 pages. And the student in the first cell very respectfully asks this question: "Sir, did you read the draft I left on your desk?" To which the professor replies, "I've looked at it." 4 words. Now the 2 remaining cells in this cartoon give us 2 very different scenarios of what those 4 words mean. Now the middle cell is what the student hopes. The student hopes that we as trainers, we as research mentors, have spent a lot of time reading all of the pages, page after page after page. We've read every paragraph. We've read and absorbed every sentence. We've read and absorbed every word. And at the end, not only have we looked at it in detail, but we've come to the conclusion, this is amazing. Now, it may well be amazing, but the part of this that is not realistic is that, sadly, the mentors, the professors, the trainers